an entrepreneurial business, you get an inbound, you think, yeah, great, and you make it happen. There's never a question as whether it's the right or wrong thing to do. You just do it because you want to do it and you want the business to grow.
Juliet Barratt, co-founder of Grenade, the global health and fitness brand that went from kitchen table startup to £200 million exit.
The week before the sale, I was absolutely distraught. So I was in tears, and it was this thought that something that you'd worked so hard at, that was so part of you, that you'd lived and breathed for 10, 11 years, suddenly wasn't going to be part of you anymore. It's almost like grieving, that you're grieving something that you built that is no longer yours. I'm a massive believer in making every day count, because you genuinely don't know how many days you've got left. And even if you have a shit day, it's still a great day, and anything can be turned into a positive. So I'm all for making every day count now. Even it's the little things, they all matter.
You know, we're going to talk about brand and the huge success, but what people see isn't always the reality. And I know you did, Grenade wasn't your first business, it wasn't your first venture. So can we talk a little bit about the early days, Julia, and how life actually started in a business context for you?
Yeah, of course. So I had a very sort of traditional background, school, university, and then I actually qualified as a teacher. But I was like the shittest teacher out there. So I think Cameron Diaz, bad teacher, but not as hot. So I taught geography and PE, and like we watched a lot of videos. And I think, you know, everyone says about when you start a business, it's like the day you actually start that business. But I actually see teaching as a massive learning curve for me, because it taught me what I didn't want to do. And it taught me that having my life ruled by a bell and like lots of structure just didn't work for me. So I spent a very short time being a rubbish teacher. And then I went to the Jam House in Birmingham, got absolutely hammered, and met Al. And that was really the start of the Grenade story. He had a distribution business before, so selling other products to gyms and health clubs. So I went to work with him, or for him rather, as he would like to say, in that business. And I think it was that experience of selling other people's products to gyms and health club, we realised that we could do it. And I always say better, but I don't mean better because that sounds arrogant. I mean, we could do it differently. And that's when we realised that we wanted our own brands, and we would market it very differently from what was out there. And that was the start of Grenade.
So early days. So as you say, well, I think when we were talking, when we caught up the other week, you said something like, I know you had like work experience of how many years was it before you started Grenade? 15 years, 10 years?
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, the work experience is like the teaching when you realise what you don't want to do. And then it's working for, you know, selling other people's products to gyms and health clubs, and learning about the marketing and what customers want and what they buy, and, you know, what's important to them. So yeah, that was that sort of 15 years work experience.
Well, they say, don't you, like 10 years to become an overnight success, or whatever the number is. But so when you and Al got together, it was a romantic kind of engagement in the beginning, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Really? And then how did you know that you could actually tolerate each other to start a business together? Because it is always difficult when you're in a personal relationship. We know we heard from Maxine and Darby about relationships being mother and daughter. But for you and Al, you were partners, you were romantically together.
Yeah.
How did you know you could tolerate each other from a business point of view?
I mean, as soon as we met, he was taking pictures of girls, and that sounds really wrong, but they were on a hen night or something. And so I thought he's either a really nice guy or a complete pervert. And it turned out that he was a really nice guy. And, you know, we went on holiday after 3 weeks, got engaged after 5 weeks, got married after 9 months. So we're get shit done type of people. And, you know, we met, we knew it was right. We were completely aligned with our values, and we knew that we both had very, very different skill sets. And a lot of people think, well, you know, you were married and you ran the business, but actually there was a reason that we should have met, and it was to run the business. That sounds wrong, but you know what I mean.
But you had different roles. So you were more on the marketing side, weren't you? And I was more sort of overseeing the general sort of running of the business.
Yeah, right. Definitely. And like, you know, as Maxine said, so I could always say, you know, what Maxine and Darcy said, but, you know, we had complete trust with each other, and we had very different skill sets. So Al did the sales and the MPD, I did the marketing and everything else really. And we never, ever butted heads on the business. We were completely aligned. But also we had the respect for each other, that we let each other go and do their stuff and then came back together. There was never this nitpicking about, oh, I want to do this in marketing, or I want to do that in sales, because it just never would have worked. So we were completely aligned and trusted each other.
So let's talk about the brand, right? Because really, well, impactful name and a really powerful brand. I mean, most people in the room here, most people here, raise your hand if you'd heard of Grenade as a brand.
Thank God for that.
It was a risky question, Juliet, but I thought I'd go there. I'm confident that there was going to be a big hand raise. So you built a powerful brand that is nationally known now, and internationally, actually, isn't it? But in those early days, how did you come up with the name? How did you come up with the concept? Because I think that product innovation in the early days, a lot of businesses don't get it right at the beginning. Well, you guys seem to kind of hit on it pretty early on once you decided what you wanted to do. So talk us through the brand journey and the name side of it, if that's all right.
I mean, everything at that time in 2010, it was like a sports nutrition product. So everything was sold in very generic white tubs with scientific names like Xenadrin, Zedracut, Hydroxycut. And nobody could remember what they were called when they stepped outside of the gym or the health club. So I think, with any business, there's always a little bit of the founders in all of the products. And, being a bit sort of strange, eccentric, that had to come through in our products. And I was obsessed with paintballs. So the back of our garage at home looked like some sort of arms dealership. And we had a lot of friends in the military. And when we used to go on holiday, literally used to sit there watching the military channel. So, seeing the grenade shape, it just sort of clicked. And I hate that light bulb moment because I never think that really happens. But it just felt right. And so much, you as founders, as entrepreneurs, is so much is about gut feeling. And we knew that if we had something that was in a grenade-shaped container, it didn't matter what language you spoke, where you were in the world, it would translate and people would know what that product was called by the look and feel of it.
And the name itself then, did you have a think tank? Did you have a little group session? Where did the actual name come from then?
A friend tried one of the products. We used to use our friends as guinea pigs. And he tried it and he went, shit, that was like a grenade. Actually, I think he said a word in front of shit, but you get the gist. And he was like, that was a grenade going off. And it just felt right. And, I'm all for that gut feeling. And I think Maxine said, or Darcy, you can overanalyze and overthink and you never fucking do anything. So for us, it just felt right and we did it and it worked. And I think because we completely believed in that and were behind it, everything we did was focused on that grenade, so we never deviated from that really strong, distinctive brand.
And then so the very first product. Then talk us through the first product, and then how the product kind of evolved after that. Because I know you kept it very tight. It wasn't like you produced a huge range of stuff. You kept it quite tight, didn't you?
Yeah.
You did change the products a little bit over the time, didn't you? Added to it.
Yeah. So when we launched, we always wanted to be the Red Bull of sports nutrition. So we wanted one product that was really distinctive that said what it did on the tin. Because again, as been mentioned earlier, people will only buy your product if it works. You might get one sale, but for them to keep buying it and keep buying it, they've got to trust it. They need to like it and they need to feel some sort of effect. So, we started with a caffeine-based product. You could really feel it working, caffeine, green tea, bitter orange in it. All those ingredients that gave you a real smack in the face. And actually, it was a weight loss product. And the one thing that most people in sports nutrition wanted to do was to lose weight. So, we really set our stall out. We only ever wanted one product, but because it was in a grenade-shaped container, it looked a bit gimmicky. And actually, one of the buyers at Juliet Barratt said to us, well, are you going to bring out any other products? Because to have a real credible brand, you probably need a range. You don't just want a one-hit wonder. So then we started to do other sports nutrition products, so pre-workouts, creatines, proteins, etc. But the flagship product of Grenade in the early days was that thermo detonator.
Okay. And given that it was a caffeine-based product, because as you were talking, I was thinking, all right, did you ever get any backlash on that at all, or any kind of negativity around that caffeine kind of hit? Because now, I guess today, we're a bit more conscious about caffeine, caffeine-free products and stuff. So was there any sort of backlash or pushback at all?
No, never. I mean, there was a bit of talk in Europe about caffeine being banned, and I think that's why we got one round of investment. But, caffeine for me is life. If I didn't have coffee, I'd be so miserable. You're never going to appeal to anyone. So if, you're talking to the decaf people over there in the green t-shirt, then you're never going to appeal to them. But there are a lot of people in sports nutrition that were taking caffeine-based products.
Yeah, and I guess that comes back to what Maxine was saying, wasn't it? About being super clear, what's your why, who's your target customer, and then staying true to kind of that DNA, really, isn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah. So in the early days, when you've got a great brand, you've got a great product, you and Al are working nicely together, which is fantastic. And what was the office setup, or what was the distribution, the warehouse setup? Because it was pretty gritty, wasn't it, in those early days? Let's paint a picture for us, if that's all right, Julie.
Yeah, so definitely. Day one, it was a bedroom upstairs, and we always used like 3PL. Then we moved to a very, very small warehouse with no central heating and no lighting. So I was like a little hermit at the back. But everything was very, like, we always call it hand-to-hand combat. You know, we had an investment in 2014 at 18 million, and there were 2 staff and 4 cats. That was literally, we did everything ourselves, and we grew the business organically. And that was really, really important to us. And also, we knew where our strengths and our weaknesses were. So we started to do some of our own warehousing. You know, I was unloading pallets on forklifts and like putting them through the back of the unit and all sorts of things like that. And then we realized that actually our forte wasn't in warehousing. We could get someone to do that much better for us. Our forte was in new product development and marketing. So we focused everything on that.
Yeah. So obviously, if I got slightly more glamorous as you got bigger and got more successful. And with the team, you know, was there a point that you knew that you were scaling up? Because, you know, there's been a lot of talk over the last couple of days about the difference, the evolution of a business starting, scaling, exiting, and you've done all of that, right? But was there a point where you went, right, okay, actually, what has got us here is not going to get us to the next level? Because I think that's often a tipping point for a lot of founders, a lot of businesses. You know, when do you make the change? And what does that change actually mean? What does scaling up really mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think some businesses, there are 2 ways of looking at it. You either get grassroots people in that are doers, but aren't going to actually add direction and strategy, etc., or you get in those people that come in really high up, but actually can't help with the day-to-day and are probably a big expense. So I think for us, the turning point was in 2014 when we got investment from Grow Point Capital. And Al and I really didn't give a shit about the numbers. And I know that sounds a bit sort of not negligent, but, you know, we're about growing the brands. And we were firm believers that if we focused on the brand, then the sales would come. Whereas the investors, obviously, they had an invested interest and put money in, and they wanted us to have an FD in the business. So I think having somebody in that could do something that you couldn't do or weren't particularly interested in actually frees you up to do what you do love and what you are really good at doing.
So that first role, that CFO, that FD, that sort of slightly more corporate role, shall we say, which was needed at the time. But the selection of that key individual was quite an interesting way, wasn't it, that you actually brought him into the business? So maybe just share a little bit around that was aligned with getting the finance and the funding that you had as well.
Yeah.
Rose Point.
So obviously Grow Point put some money and wanted an FT in. So they did the recruitment process for us. And then we were at Body Power at the NEC. I think it was 2010, 2011. And this guy, 6'8", came walking over to the booth. And he said, oh, I've been shortlisted for the finance job. And he looked so out of his comfort zone. So this guy come from like bathroom city or bathroom world. We still take the piss out of him now for it. And he looked really, really uncomfortable. But actually, Tom, I mean, he's the CEO now. He was not only a phenomenal FD, but he was really commercially savvy and he loved the business. So I think the combination of those 3 things, he was bloody brilliant at numbers. He really gave a shit about the business and people liked him and he was really commercially savvy. That's helped him grow into that much wider role.
Yeah, and now he's running the shop, right?
Yeah.
Which is incredible. So, and what do you think in terms of the other key roles? So obviously that's one really important role. But again, it's like, who do you employ when you're scaling up? Which roles do you go for? You know, so obviously as you're building that team to give you the foundations to scale, Juliet, what were the other key roles that you needed to bring in? And kind of how did you go about that after you've got that first big role sorted?
Yeah, I mean, I think as we started to sell internationally, that international role was really important. But, you know, one of the early roles that we brought in was a guy that helped with production. And I remember him coming to an interview with us. I think I had to give him his bus fare or something because he's like straight out of like university or college. And he was just in a production role. So he was a real sort of data geek. He loved numbers, great attention to detail. And he's now the head of production. So he's been in with the business like 12, 15 years because he's grown into that role. And I think, you employ people to start off with the right cultural fit because you like them and you hope that they grow into the role that you need them to be. But also we were very good at picking people that actually couldn't move forward. And so we brought in people that had the experience, had the black book of contacts that could come in and hit the ground running. But one of the challenges that we faced is culture was so important to us at Grenade. Like Al and I were still integral to the business in there 7 o'clock until 7 o'clock at night. So we needed to bring on people that got the Grenade story and actually realised that we started in some shitty warehouse in Solihull and we weren't going to offer avocado on toast for breakfast. So it was really, really important to get that balance of skill set versus cultural fit.
Yeah, and of course the distribution went crazy, right? So you're 80 countries, I think, maybe even more now, actually. But that international element, so started in the UK, started here locally in the Midlands. But when you went international, was that a frightening decision? Was it just happen naturally? How did you tackle going from UK centric to kind of international? Because that's a big leap, isn't it, to make?
Yeah, I don't really think it's tackling it. I think it's you just do it because we got inbounds from the US relatively early and from Europe. And, as an entrepreneurial business, you get an inbound, you think, yeah, great, and you make it happen. So there's never a question as whether it's the right or wrong thing to do. You just do it because you want to do it and you want the business to grow. I think when it came to 2017, we had a couple of second round of private equity. I think they made us be a bit more strategic and actually do a bit of market research as to that particular territory, realise if the prize was big enough and if it was worth our time investing in that. But, as an entrepreneurial business early days, if we got an inbound, we made it happen.
Yeah, okay. So it was the opportunities came and then you just kind of got on and cracked on.
Yeah, we didn't say no to anything. So it just wasn't in our DNA.
Yeah. And were there any of those decisions, opportunities that you said yes to that with hindsight you wish you hadn't said yes to?
I think hindsight's a wonderful thing. And I could sit here and go, yes, there were no decisions that we made, but it's way too early to go into the US because we didn't have the infrastructure in place. We weren't spending enough on marketing. This was a day whenever we did like magazine adverts, every page was like $12,500. And, that was such a big investment to us. Whereas for the other US brands that we were competing with, it was just a drop in the ocean. They had a £3 million marketing budget. We just didn't have that. And actually, we pulled out of the US and then we went back in a few years later when we had a team on the ground over there.
Well, that is a brave decision to decide to pull out and go, actually, we're too early. It's not quite the right time. But interesting that you went back in when you'd kind of sorted it out and got your head around it. And it was the right time then, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But actually, we thought having the US would be the trade, the exit. But Mondelez that bought it in 2021 don't give a shit about the US. So actually what we thought was the prize wasn't actually relevant.
Yeah. So we're in 2017, we're growing massively at this stage, and the exit happened in 2020 with Mondelez. Thank you. I put my teeth back in. I've got new teeth, everyone. I've had new teeth done anyway. Sorry, slight side. Yeah. So when you were making the decision as to when to sell and who to sell to, was that a really difficult decision? Because we've heard a lot over the last few days about businesses that have sold, businesses that never planned to sell and they want to, create a legacy, a family, etc. But you did decide to sell. How did you know it was the right time? And then we'll come back to the right choice of person to sell to.
It's the right time. I don't know whether there is ever a right time. It's just the time. And, we had a couple of rounds of private equity, 2014, 2017. So I think that had almost got us over that initial, oh shit, I'm selling some of the business. So we obviously weren't majority shareholders by that particular point. So some of the pain had been taken away. But when Al and I set up Grenade and when we started to do carb killer bars in 2015, we always said that we wanted to sell to Cadbury's. And obviously Mondelez bought Cadbury's like 10 years ago or whatever. So it just felt like the natural fit. And some founders do make, not the error, but maybe, they wish they'd have sold earlier. And, it just felt right. It was that gut feeling. And there was a protein bar in the US that was like really, really popular. And they had a $600 million valuation. They decided not to sell. It was called Quest Bars. And then stuff started to go wrong and the taste profile wasn't right and consumers walked away. And suddenly that 600 mil valuation wasn't there anymore. And I bet they wish they'd have sold then. So we never wanted to be in that position where we thought, shit, we should have done that.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because you're never going to really know, did you sell too early? Did you sell too late? But I think probably that going on around the same time kind of gave you get me the confidence.
And I know this sounds really, really stupid, but you could put your house on the market for $1.5 million, but people only spend £1 million on it. So it's only worth what someone's going to buy, what someone's going to spend on it. And, for us, having it go to the right owner was more important than another couple of years and maybe a 5 million, 10 million more, or whatever. It went to the right home.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about the right owner. And what did the right owner look? I know you had this vision of wanting to sell to Cadbury's, but what was the sort of criteria, if you like, that you had in mind in terms of it was going to be important for you to let go, if you like, and sell your baby?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we weren't majority shareholders, so pretty much the process was out of our control. We were completely on board with it, but it wasn't our decision. I think because they could add additional value, so obviously with the manufacturing, Mondelez own Oreo, which we always wanted to do an Oreo bar, so we thought where there would be some MPD. And in a weird way, it was a Birmingham-based office. Yeah. So it was really important to us that all the staff that worked at the business would carry on working for the business. So it was a pretty easy transition and they're all kept on. So it's things like that were important.
Well, yeah, because I guess the team wanted to make sure that, everyone was looked after in the right way is important because it is your legacy, it is your brand that people today still say, oh, Juliet, co-founder of Grenade, even now, all these years later, it's still very much you and Al, isn't it, in terms of the business identity?
Yeah, I mean, I think Maxine said, the business outgrows the founders and that's the way it should be. But, those guys that are at the business, and they still are there now, a lot of them, they were like family. I know it sounds a bit crap and cheesy, but we genuinely cared about them and they helped us on that journey. So we would never have sold to anyone that was just going to sack them all and put them in an office in London or, in Europe.
Yeah, and in 2020, you decided to fully exit. Al stayed in for a while. What was it like? And we've spoken about this privately, but I think it's a really interesting insight. What was it like that day when, the money's landed in the bank, you're free, you've moved on? What's the feeling? Take us through sort of how the emotional side of it, Juliet, and that sort of final exit.
Well, I laugh now, but I know I've been quoted in saying it was like root canal. And I know that you shouldn't think about selling your business and getting a shitload of money in the bank is like sort of having horrendous dental stuff. But, for me, the week before the sale, I was absolutely distraught. So I was in tears. And it was this thought that something that you'd worked so hard at, that was so part of you, that you'd lived and breathed for, 10, 11 years, suddenly wasn't going to be part of you anymore. And it should have been a bit easier because, like I said, we'd gone through a couple of sale processes before that. But this was really final and there was no going back. So I was absolutely distraught. The day that it happened, I had to go to my lawyers at like 1 o'clock in the morning. And then it happened like Saturday evening, early Sunday morning. And I remember John, our lawyer, phoning me up and goes, Jules, have you looked in your bank? Is the money there? And I went, I haven't even looked. And I know that sounds like it didn't matter, but it was so final. It's almost like grieving, that you're grieving something that you built that is no longer yours. God, that sounds so pathetic, but it's really true.
I mean, does anyone sort of have that feeling? Yeah, okay, there's lots of nods and shakes, and hands raised. So that's I think it is. We've got to be honest, haven't we, about, and we're human beings with emotions and all of that. So you have, obviously, since then you're doing some really cool stuff. What advice would you give, with hindsight, either to yourself or to other people that are in this phase of exiting and planning for that next phase? Can you plan for it, or do you just have to go with the flow? What are your thoughts on sort of life post-exit, really?
It's so weird, when people set up businesses, they almost think that exiting is this like, you've succeeded, you've won. And I think unless you've really thought about stuff after the business, it comes as a bit of a shock. And whether it's worse because like I haven't got children or whatever, I'd never really thought about life post Grenade. I always thought that I'd go again, and that's not off the table. But, so many brands do, founders do go again, and they get a second album. And that I never wanted something that wasn't as special as the first one. And I never wanted to do something that didn't mean as much to me as Grenade. So it took a little bit of time to actually find that purpose again.
Yeah.
And, I'm really good at filling my time. Like, I go on amazing holidays, and I'm a bit weird like Maxine, and like just really, really spontaneous, and will do crazy stuff. But it doesn't give you a purpose. And I think that's something that takes longer to actually find.
Yeah, because I guess there's a piece around identity, isn't there, here? That you've started this thing, it's your DNA, your values are all embedded in Grenade. So it's almost, we all know logically it's not who we are, it's what we do. But still, there's a bit around personal identity. It's almost like, who am I? I think I was talking to Pete Cohen outside, I know Pete's at the back there. We were saying, well, who's Jules now, post-exit? Yeah. So finding yourself again, right?
Yeah, and I think when you're in a business, you're constantly having to prove yourself, whether it's to investors, or you're having to hit numbers, or you're having to be someone for the staff. When you're not in that anymore, you don't actually have to prove yourself. And it takes a little bit of time to realise, do you know what, I'm all right, and I don't have to put on a show, and I can just be me. And I'm in such a fortunate position that I have a wonderful life, and I'm massively grateful for everything. And I know Grenade has given me all of those opportunities. And let's face it, the Grenade journey was pretty fucking amazing anyway. We went on wonderful holidays. We worked with friends, we built a phenomenal brand. We had some amazing experiences. So, I'm just in a really, really fortunate position. And Grenade has enabled me to be in this position, and I'm eternally grateful.
Yeah. And what did you learn about yourself through this mad journey that you've been on? Or what some of the things that sort of revealed themselves about yourself almost through that entire journey of starting, scaling, exiting, and kind of where you are now? What are some what's behind?
I mean, I'm not a very reflective person, if I'm honest with you. I'm more of a get shit done type of girl. But I think I realised that I'm actually quite a good all-rounder, and I'll give anything a go, from driving forklifts to doing spreadsheets to, branding or whatever. I've realised that being in a team is better than being on your own. And there's definitely power and strength in being surrounded by good people. And also how important having the right people around you in life and in businesses. And that one bad egg can really have a negative impact on the business or you as a person.
But one final question in terms of life now then, Jules. What are you up to today and all the stuff you've got going on?
Yeah, so I do non-exec chairperson roles for like some other food brands and consumer goods, which is amazing, and working with founders that I like, which I think is really important to help them on that growth journey. Al and I have still got businesses together, so, that's like passive investments now, but that's good fun. And, somebody said to me this morning, what's not your purpose, but, what drives you and what are you passionate about? And I think, I'm a massive believer in making every day count, because you genuinely don't know how many days you've got left. And even if you have a shit day, it's still a great day, and anything can be turned into a positive. So I know it sounds really, really cheesy, and I apologise, but I'm all for making every day count now. Even it's the little things, they all matter.
Yeah, great. I mean, great advice to all of us, right? Yeah, let's make it count. We only got one life. So yeah.
And my parking space at work was Angry Bird. And, it's still my iPhone name, and everyone goes, oh, that's you, isn't it? And I think that, when you're in the business, everything matters so much, and you care so much about it. Whereas now I'm sort of in that position that if something doesn't go right, I'll deal with it. Yeah. And nothing makes me angry anymore.
I would like to give a massive round of applause to Juliet. Thank you.
If this conversation resonated with you, don't just sit there, act on it. Make sure you follow or subscribe for more game-changing conversations, and remember, the only thing standing between you and your business breakthrough is the decision to screw it and just do it.